Could you please state your name?
Yeah, name is Barry Doherty. Doherty.
Okay. Are you a resident of Michigan?
Yes.
For how many years?
15, 20.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you are over the age of 18?
I am.
And the things we're going to be talking about today, can we say focused on personally what you witnessed?
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. On what days were you involved with the election this year?
I was involved on Tuesday, November 3rd. Arrived at 6:30 a.m. and left at 10:30 p.m.
Where were you at?
I was at Coble Hall, TCF Center, as a poll challenger credentialed by the Republican Party.
Okay. And what did you witness that you want to tell us about today?
Well, I think one of the things that someone said I should explain what I saw was the issue of internet connectivity in the site.
Okay.
And for the most part, and I've got it all documented. I don't know if it's best just to talk to it, or do you want me to read from this? Does it make a difference?
We like to get a copy of your notes, but if you would just want to give us a quick summary of what you witnessed, and we'll ask questions and something jumps out at us.
Okay. So it was, from our training, it was understanding that there should be no internet connectivity, phones, things like that in the polling place where we were counting absentee ballots. And we identified what appeared to be internet connectivity. We asked the...
How did you identify that?
I'll go into that too.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So we basically first went to Daniel Baxter and asked him, do you have internet connectivity? And basically they said, no, we don't have any internet connectivity in there. And can you explain then what we're seeing here? And he was busy at the time, couldn't get back to us.
What did you believe was connected to the internet?
So there was all the tabulation machines, both on the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the stage, depending on what you're looking at it, had blue cabling coming out of the tabulation machines into routers. The left side had a router, and the right side had a router, and all blue cables were going into those two routers. And I kind of diagrammed it that night when I was there.
So like an internet router like you would use at home if you had Ethernet?
Yes, yeah. They, I don't know if it was a hub or a router, but it was definitely an electronic device that was on and receiving data in and out based upon the lights coming on and off, so you could see traffic.
Yeah.
So, and then those routers went into a computer stack on the stage that had another router hub device in it. Same behavior. And then from that router hub to a third router hub, there was a connectivity. And from that hub, we saw an Ethernet cable coming out of that into a socket in the wall, an Ethernet tab into the wall on one of the central columns just across from the stage. That particular Ethernet connection had a connection up to a Wi-Fi router or receiver or transmitter up closer to the ceiling. That was on, lights were coming on and off on that. So from my experience working in the technology area for many years, that signaled to me that there was some kind of in and out data happening in that location.
So you said you worked in internet technology for years. What was your role?
Yeah, I worked, my first part of my career, I worked for electronic data systems. And so I was a computer programmer, I was a designer, I worked on putting networks in, cabling, all of that activities.
And you brought up what you saw with Daniel Baxter.
We brought that up, yeah. Myself, Patrick Kolbeck, and Phil O'Halloran, 3 individuals. We were kind of working together, crawling on the floors, trying to make sure we got a good understanding of the cabling. And when we went back to them, they basically, after we talked to them the first time, they verified, no, there is no internet connectivity in there. We asked, could you explain what we're seeing? And they said that they didn't have anybody that could explain the connectivity, but that there was no internet connectivity.
Okay. Could there be any legitimate reason for those machines to be networked internally to the Cobo Hall or the TCF without necessarily getting to the outside world in terms of the internet?
That could be possible. Absolutely.
Okay.
That could be possible. And that's why we were trying to seek somebody who could help us understand how it was configured.
Okay.
So,
But their response to you was, don't worry about it.
don't worry about it. Yeah.
Did they tell you those machines had a local area network?
They did not say that. No, they did not say that. I did indicate that we could pull this one Ethernet cable out of the wall and everything should just continue to work fine locally. You don't need any external connectivity out of this room. And we were advised not to touch anything. So, not that I was going to touch it, but theoretically I said, this one connection I could pull out and everything would work fine.
Who told you to not pull that out?
There was a gentleman there. I do not have his name. He was there throughout the whole day. What I saw him doing was whenever one of the tabulating machines had a jam or had issues technically, they would call him over for a technical perspective to correct the situation. So I'm assuming he was one of their technical people on site. And I think he was advised not to discuss the configuration of anything because that was not his job to discuss it.
So, from a very layman's point of view here, if all the tabulation machines were networked and were broadcasting externally, that would give someone a real-time read on what the vote tabulations were.
That would be the first conclusion I come to, correct?
Are there any other conclusions you would come to as to why someone would do that?
Part of this dialogue that we were having with Daniel Baxter, and I believe Chris Thomas was also there at the time, and David Nathan. The real fundamental question we were also asking is, how do you take the results of what is happening today, pass it along to the clerk so the clerk can properly report the precinct activity there? And they either were not able to or were not willing to give us that answer. So
Who was Baxter? Wasn't lying?
yeah, Baxter wasn't willing to tell us.
Was it just Baxter, or were there other people with Baxter?
At that time, we were talking to Baxter, but I do know that Chris Thomas was probably within 5 or 10 feet of that conversation for certain. And even Secretary of State Benson was there at that time because this was happening about 8:20 p.m. in the evening. So I saw Secretary Benson.
What was happening?
Excuse me.
Thanks. So you said at 8:20 is when you're having this conversation with Baxter about connectivity, and you personally witnessed Benson on site?
Benson was on site, yeah. I didn't talk to her, anything along those lines, but Benson, unless it was a look-alike, I don't know. I mean,
did it seem odd to you?
well, I'm not sure it seemed odd, but we hadn't seen her all day. But it was at the point in time when they had released all of the current shift of people that were working, and the other shift was soon to come in. So everything had kind of quieted down. There wasn't a lot of people, as many people in the room.
And this was on Election Day on November 3rd.
That is correct. So our concern was, how are you getting that information to the clerk so they can report it properly? And, because we were suspect that it was going to go on over the internet somehow, which just to me, or to us that were concerned, is that anytime it goes out into the public internet, there could be an issue with intercepting or having something happen to that data. It was our understanding that a lot of places actually would put it like on a thumb drive and personally take it to where it needed to go after the counting was done. So that's what we thought we would hear from Baxter. Yeah, we put it on a thumb drive and we take it to point A. He didn't say that.
Would there be a potential security issue networking all those tabulation machines together and exposing them to the outside world for somebody to dial in and do something to the machines?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're not secured properly, we don't know how the security channel would have been after it left the building. But if you got an incoming and an outgoing channel, so you can be, impacting what's going out, but you can also be sending certain stuff back in, right? And that opens up a plethora of doors is what could be happening with data coming in. They could be using that data for all sorts of different reasons. Speculate on that.
And I know you said this before, and I'm sorry to ask you something on repeat here, but could you remember exactly what Daniel Baxter said to you when you brought these concerns to him?
I think back to my notes here. I think if I got the actual quotes, I think I do have it in here. It wasn't much. I mean, we didn't have. It was very short and brief.
Sure.
And okay, so the actual question when I was standing next to Pat Colbert to Daniel Baxter was if there's any internet connectivity to the devices in this polling location. His reply was, quote unquote, no. Then Pat asked for verification on this, and the reply was, trust me, and no further verification or confirmation.
Did you say to him, we've seen these network devices, we've seen this Ethernet router?
We did. We explained that to him, and that's when the no, just trust me kind of came in. I know what you might have seen and what you're looking at, but trust me, everything's fine.
He didn't deny that you didn't see it. He didn't say there's nothing like that outside.
No, he didn't deny it, and we wanted him to come over and
inspect it
and take a look at it with us, or send one of his technicians over, and they weren't willing to do that.
But so they had technicians on site?
The one gentleman, and I wish I had his name, I apologize, I didn't get that, but there was a technician. He was the one that would troubleshoot tabulation machines that had problems, or at all of the polling tables or all of the counting tables, there was there was laptops there too. So if there was issues with that, he was going around and trying to solve those or document them or correct them and get the tabulation machines going again.
Did you know what his title was?
I don't.
So you interpreted his responsibilities as being kind of the
closest thing to a technician I could identify in the room.
Is there any way that person would not have seen the same wires that you did?
That person, when we were on the floor looking underneath where all the cabling was going, questioned us to what we were doing. And we said, we're just trying to understand the network connectivity. And he said, well, you shouldn't be down there. And I said, then we kind of said, can you explain to us then what we're seeing? Because we're concerned. Can you explain it? And he goes, I didn't configure the building, or I don't know exactly how it's configured. So, but I have to ask you to leave that area. Don't go there. And we said, we're not touching anything. We're just observing.
And when he said, I didn't configure the building, you weren't looking at the building's infrastructure. You were looking at the wires that they had connected the machines there.
That's true. That's true.
So, I mean, his response was...
I mean, it could be accurate. I'm not saying that he didn't configure it, but, we asked, can you help us with this? Because we recognize him as a technical person, and he wasn't willing to do that. My impression is that he was asked not to go beyond his specific role there. So
Did he say who had asked him to tell you to leave or not inspect further?
no, he just said you shouldn't be down there.
Okay. And so he was certainly aware of these chords. He was certainly aware of these assumptions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he knows exactly what chords you're talking about.
Can you describe this person?
He was a young male, white male, probably between 25 and 35,
What was his hair color?
light brown,
Fat, skinny?
more stocky than skinny.
Any facial features that were? Did he have facial hair?
I don't remember that, sir.
Okay. Did he have an accent? No. Do you remember what he was wearing?
Can't picture.
That's okay. That's okay.
Saw a lot of people that day.
Sure. Did you notice him there the entire time?
All day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you present on the 4th at all?
I wasn't.
Okay. So between the times that you were there, generally speaking, 6:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m., you generally noticed him there the whole time.
Correct. He was all over the room helping people or helping. I specifically saw him a lot on the tabulating machines when there were jams and stuff like that.
Okay.
He'd open it up. He had compressed air, so he'd be trying to clean it out. He would take a piece out and try to clean it out, try to get the machines going again from the jams.
Did you ever notice him with correction tape?
No.
Okay, great. Ed?
Anything else you want to tell us?
I think just in general, I mean, some general comments. I mean, it was it as a challenger, it was very difficult to get cooperation at the tables.
Did anybody follow you around the room?
The people who tended to kind of keep an eye on us seemed to be challengers from perhaps the Democrat Party or the ACLU. They seemed to be more interested with our whereabouts than anything else.
Anybody harass you or try to intimidate you?
Yeah, there was. Both my wife and I was there, so I'll just speak on my behalf. But yeah, on multiple occasions, we would try to get within 6 feet to especially see like a duplicating activity of ballots going on. And they said, you're too close, get beyond 6 feet. You're not allowed to be here in that capacity. And we explained the law and what had recently been decided in courts that we could. So what we did is we tried to stay 6 feet behind them, but when we needed to see something, we would step in. And they didn't like that, so there was a lot of pushback on that. Not necessarily of the individual poll workers, but the chairman that ran the table. The chairman was really on more than one table, was very aggressive, I think, like that. There was a time where the second staff was coming in for the poll challengers. So as a poll challenger, we were leaving at 10. Another group was coming in. So what I was doing was just giving them a lay of the land, helping them understand what was going to be happening. And I walked up to an empty tabulator machine that really it was just sitting idle. And I was simply explaining, this is the machine that will feed the ballots through, and it has a counter on it. And then here's a screen that will record also how many went through the machines. And the thing is, you want to keep those ballots, right? You want to zero them out when it's the right time to zero them out if there's a jam or something. Well, there was a worker there that absolutely said, you have no business being here. You need to leave now. You have no priority here. Leave. And I simply said to her, I said, look, I've been here all day. You just came on. Perhaps you should go talk to your supervisor and bring him over here. But we have the right to be here. And she did. And she came back and actually she apologized. And she did say, you have the right to be here. And she goes, but then she went on and started talking about how Biden deserved to win and you Republican people just don't get it. So she went into a little bit of that diatribe. So
This was a poll worker?
this was a poll worker that was working on a particular tabulation machine, or would be.
They're not even supposed to talk to you. I thought you're supposed to speak with the supervisor.
Yeah. So I'm not always sure that all the people that were there working were
So
well
poll
trained.
worker told you, knowing you were affiliated with the Republican Party, that Biden deserves to win. You just don't get it.
And you just don't get it.
As part of her apology.
That came on as a part of her second part of the apology. So, I didn't try to goad her on.
Can you remember her exact words? Or as
Um,
close to it as you can?
Basically, her exact words was, my supervisor sent me over and said I should apologize, that I was incorrect. And I said, thank you, appreciate that. And she goes, but Biden is going to win, and he does deserve to win, and Republicans just have to understand what's good for the country or for what's going on here. That was the general gist.
And this was on election night.
This was on election night. This was probably in the time frame of 9:30 to 10 o'clock.
So the polls had been closed for 2.5, 3 hours,
Yeah, the polls were already closed,
As I recall,
but not by much.
but not by much.
was Trump ahead at that point in Michigan?
Oh, yes.
I thought so too.
Yeah, he had about 10-point lead at that point, I think, if I remember.
We have a soothsayer here in Detroit, don't we?
Well, it made me feel very uncomfortable, and it didn't seem, because we were not supposed to be party affiliated. We're not supposed to be wearing anything that was party affiliated. We weren't supposed to be campaigning, and it felt like that's what was going on there.
How do you feel about, how does your experience there on election day affect your confidence in the results from Wayne County?
I will be very blatant and blunt about this. I was very surprised on how tight it wasn't, and how there was so much room for issue and problems. I was really quite amazed. I thought it was going to be a little bit tighter than that. And so I was personally shocked, and I don't have any feeling of integrity in the system right now. I really don't. I think with the absentee ballots, there just has been so many touch points, and the more touch points you put into a process stream, just invites more chances for either deliberate or accidental error. And I saw both. I saw deliberate and I saw accidental error going on. So, there was a box in the central area of blank ballots. Okay, these were blank ballots, and individuals in the tables, if they wanted to duplicate something, they would walk up to the table, and I was watching this, and they say, I need 5 blank ballots. Okay, and they just give them 5 blank ballots. Well, were all those 5 being duplicated because they had 5 bad duplications and they needed to duplicate 5? Or were they going to take 5 back to the station, put 4 over here and duplicate 1? There was no checks and balances there. It wasn't like, okay, here are 3 spoiled ballots that I need to duplicate. Give me 3. Nothing like that. Nothing was being written down. When they took those blank ballots, they just walked away. And, it wasn't always a table lead that was doing it. Sometimes people would come up that were just working the table. They weren't the chairperson. So, that was highly uncomfortable and disturbing.
Anything else you want to point out? We'll get a copy of your notes.
Okay. Yeah, there were definitely observations of ballots that were being processed that were not in the paper or on the electronic poll book. We did see that.
Meaning that there were ballots coming in that could not be matched either electronically or physically to a registered voter.
Right.
And you witnessed this.
And we witnessed this. My wife actually took the names down for me. We were standing there. So she's got like the names and the ballot number that it was assigned. So if I need to produce that, I can.
Excellent.
Please send it to us.
The thing about this, and that was concerning too, is that if nothing else, we felt that that should probably be a challenged ballot, right? And there was no notations being put anywhere that this should be a challenged ballot.
So your challenges were being ignored? Did you make challenges?
We questioned it, okay? We questioned it, and they said, this is how we're supposed to process it. And to be honest with you, we should have challenged it more on that day. But what we experienced is that the team leader at the table, the chairperson, whatever that role was of the worker, basically they would just say, no, this is the way it is, and we're going to keep moving. And it's like they were the supreme authority. So anytime something did come up, we would challenge it. We couldn't get them to stop, right? So you had to leave the post, theoretically go find one of our attorneys, try to find somebody like a Daniel Baxter or something, find them, the mass humanity that was there, and bring them to that table. Well, in the meantime, there's a bunch of more things going through that we have no eyes on. So it was a really, suspect situation at best. So the other thing is that when we were around the tables, we were constantly told they had a laptop that was doing scans of the new ballots or the ballots that were there. And then you had a separate screen that would show what was on that laptop, which made sense. But we were being told you could only look at the big screen. You couldn't look at the laptop, which was probably showing the same thing, and I understand that. But the problem is that you had to see the ballot that they were working with at the same time. And these screens weren't near the ballot. So that's why we wanted to be behind the actual laptop.
They tell you can't look at the laptop?
They told us, this screen is here for you to look at. You're not supposed to be behind the laptop. That's what we were told.
What was on the laptop?
The laptop was basically, they would scan in the ballot information, and then you would see it on the laptop as to whether it was on the poll book or what they're going to do with it, any notations they wanted to do with it. And so, but that was being projected to this other screen at the table. So there was a laptop and a screen. But if you were over here at the screen, which they were telling us we had to be, you couldn't see the ballot. And
so it's not like they were trying to really obscure what's on the laptop screen. If there's something malfeasant going on here, it's related to they don't want you to see what's
the ballot. They don't want you to see the ballot.
Gotcha.
And you don't see the ballot on the screen. You just see information pertaining to that particular person. So that was, that felt to be incorrect. And then, quite honestly, at 2:30, we took a count of the tables. We counted 55 tables that was doing absolutely no ballot processing at all. People were either sleeping, resting, the workers were. And at the same time, there was a collection of ballots ready to be processed that were not, across all the precincts, that were not being processed. They were there, and we asked, and they said that they weren't ready to process those yet. They looked ready. And so the thinking was that they were waiting until most of the poll challengers were gone, and there was a lighter load of poll challengers that night. And then they were going to bring those, introduce those into their second shift.
On the 3rd, on election day.
On the 3rd, but when I left at 10:30, they really hadn't started up the process yet. And so they had way too many ballots to get through on the 3rd. They were going to touch those on the 4th, going into 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm sure, if they reintroduce those. And I think the last point, well, at least one of the last points I'll make too, is that Pat Colbeck indicated to us, look, before you leave at 10 o'clock, make sure you get a count of every polling table to understand what that shift completed during the day, so that we have a baseline as they go into the second shift. So we started going around the tables to ask them, can you tell us how many you processed for these precincts at this table. And some of them basically said, oh, I don't know how to get that information. They tried, but nobody seemed to know how to get that. So we couldn't get a baseline. My understanding, there was supposed to be posted baselines, but so, that we couldn't get that. So we don't know what left off between shifts.
Okay. What tables are you working?
55, 52, 54, and 53.
Roughly where in the room were those?
Those were, if you recognize the room and you were, and the entrance is here to the room and the escalators are here, we were right in the middle and the stage was in front of us. So
Sure.
that's, I'm not really sure what was north and south, or else I'd give you that.
Yeah. Great. Ted, do you have anything else?
Did anybody offer you any kind of compensation to come and talk to us today?
No.
Has your story been coordinated with anyone else's?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.